I don't beat around the bush and I don't sit on fences. Welcome to the hottest takes in MMA. I guarantee you about 90% of you, at least 90% of you, are going to disagree with just about everything I have to say in this video. If you disagree with these takes, you can respond to me in a video. You can let me know in the comments. And I want to know if you agree with any of these, because it would be cool to see if some of you guys share these same opinions. I fully believe in these 4 scorching hot takes, and I'm willing to die on this hill. So without further ado, let's get into it. The hottest MMA takes from your boy, Lucas Tracy MMA. Number 1, Volkanovski would have beat Khabib. I don't care how dominant Khabib was in his career. Just because Islam had a war with Volkanovski doesn't mean that Khabib automatically is always better than Islam now. Oh, Khabib never got a war. Khabib never got tested. They talk about Islam as if he's some Walmart version of Khabib, when in reality, before he fought Volkanovski, he was touted as being Khabib 2.0. And y'all were all saying, including me, that Volkanovski was going to get destroyed on the ground, and look at what happened. What makes you believe that Khabib would be able to do that much better? We saw Islam look human. Well, Khabib never fought anyone like Volk. He probably would have looked human too, and guess what the difference would have been? The striking. Islam Makhachev is one of the best strikers in MMA. Statistically, before the Volkanovski fight, he was the hardest man to hit in the UFC. Think about that for a second and look at how good he did against Charles Oliveira. He hit his striking pretty well in the Bobby Green fight, the Dan Hooker fight. We all underestimated his striking. He completely destroyed Charles on the feet and gave Volkanovski's issues all day. Guess who's striking is about 5 levels below that? Khabib Nurmagomedov. Good, he has a great chin. So what? He has great cardio. So what? I don't care about the pace. Volkanovski was the fresher man in the 5th round after fighting a bigger human being. Volkanovski had taken massive shots from Islam, who is faster, who's more powerful, who's a better counter striker, who's harder to hit. If you're going to commit to hitting him, you're going to take a shot too. Khabib Nurmagomedov doesn't have the same tricks on the feet. I'm sorry, man. Volkanovski would beat him 49-46 by decision. The same thing would play out on the ground. Khabib would, without a doubt, take him down. Khabib would get dominant positions. And guess what he wouldn't be able to do? Submit Volkanovski. Guess what he wouldn't be able to do? Be able to tee off on Volkanovski on the ground, landing massive ground and pound shots. Islam Makhachev, the biggest quote-unquote lightweight, the weight bully of the division, the guy who cuts weight for an advantage, a terrifying human being, touted as the best grappler in MMA, couldn't do fuck all to Volkanovski on the ground. If we're just talking about Islam and we separate Volk from the combo, everyone's going to say he's the best grappler in MMA. Okay, great. Khabib was the best grappler in MMA at one time. If he couldn't do anything to Volkanovski on the ground like Islam couldn't, he would lose the striking exchanges. Simple as. You cannot make the argument that Khabib is a better striker than Islam. It just doesn't work like that. I think Volkanovski would have a much easier time on the feet. Again, it doesn't matter if Khabib beat Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor. Big fucking whoop. Islam would probably beat those guys too. I'm just telling you guys, this is how it is. Islam's 5 times the striker that Khabib ever was. You could talk about mentality, Khabib's mentality. You're acting like Volkanovski doesn't have a crazy mentality. You're acting like Volkanovski gets tired. This shit doesn't happen. And I'm not going to sit here. Please remember me saying this. I'm not going to sit here and say that Khabib couldn't beat Volk. Islam arguably beat Volkanovski. I think that's a fight that could have gone either way. In a rematch, it could go either way. I could see Khabib beating Volkanovski. All I'm saying is that if I were to have to pick this fight, prime versus prime, I would lean towards Volk. 60%, 65%. It would be an easier fight is all I'm saying. And if you're going to sit here and tell me otherwise in the comments, I guarantee you, you cannot come up with a better argument other than Khabib never got tested, Khabib never got in a war. Fuck that, who cares? He never fought guys that would test him. And I'm not one of these Khabib haters that's going to sit here and say, he ain't even a top 10 all time. No, he is. Khabib Nurmagomedov is one of the best fighters that ever existed. And he's underrated at this point on the all-time list. Most people underrate Khabib's legacy because back in the day, it may have been a little bit overrated. I love Khabib. He's one of my favorite fighters of all time. Volkanovski has an easier time with him than he does Islam, straight up. Islam would go through the exact same guys in a dominant fashion. He couldn't do it to Volkanovski, and people think that saying that, well, you know, Khabib was a similar stylistic matchup, he probably would have had problems. They just don't want to admit that because they're going to discredit him. They don't want to discredit him. Volk would beat Colby Covington too. Yeah, that's the real hot take of the video. Welcome to the hot takes list. Volkanovski would beat Colby. Straight up. Do I think Volkanovski would beat every single top 5 170 pounder? No. I don't think he could beat Prime Kamaru Usman. I don't think he could beat Jeff Neal. I don't think he could beat Shavkat Rakhmonov. I don't think he could beat Leon Edwards. Does that matter? No. Stylistic matchup. How dare you say that Volkanovski could possibly beat anyone 2 weight classes above him? Volkanovski, I think we can all sit here and agree, has a chance to be the lightweight world champion, right? What about the size? No, he's just too big. Colby's too big. Colby Covington is one of the smallest welterweights, and Volkanovski just beat the biggest lightweight. And are you about to sit here and act like cutting weight isn't a massive advantage? In any other conversation, if we're talking about Islam Makhachev cutting weight, you're going to tell me it gives him an advantage. Yes, that's right. Surprise, surprise. Cutting weight gives you an advantage in a fight. I understand Colby doesn't cut that much weight, and it's because he wants to not deteriorate himself. He wants to be fresh. He doesn't want to have to worry about giving away all of his energy the day before the fight. There's a give and there's a take. For Colby, it works out. I'm telling you guys right now, I don't care about Colby's size. Look at Volkanovski versus Islam. We were all saying Volk was going to get squashed like a bug. And you're going to talk about Colby Covington as if he's ever in his life dominated someone like Volkanovski. Look at RDA, 48-47 to him. Wow. Amazing win. You beat RDA, a former 155 pounder in your prime. That is Colby's best win ever. He barely scraped by him. Who do you think would win, RDA or Volkanovski? RDA is a guy that fights at 155. I guarantee you the UFC makes that fight. Prime versus prime, you're picking Volkanovski. Okay, great. And I bet he beats him better than Colby did. And I don't give a fuck about Colby's pace either. Over Jorge Masvidal, over old man Robbie Lawler. Great, you put on amazing pace over Jorge and Robbie Lawler, 2 one-dimensional fighters. Fantastic. How does that mean he beats Volkanovski? You're either going to talk about the size, you're going to talk about the wrestling, and you're going to talk about the pace. If I were to ask you who's a more dangerous grappler, who's a better grappler overall, Islam or Colby, you're going to say Islam. Why? Oh, because he actually finishes people on the ground. He can mount off damage a little bit better. I'm not going to act like Colby Covington isn't one of the best grapplers in MMA. I think he is, but I don't think he'd be able to finish Volk. I don't think he'd be able to do that much damage to Volk. And as far as the striking is concerned, it wouldn't be close. Volkanovski would have his way with pillow hands Colby. Slow twitch, muscle fiber, Colby Covington ain't shit compared to Islam Makhachev on the feet. He's not. Do I think Volkanovski could be a welterweight champion? Fuck no. Colby Covington was never a welterweight champion. The guy never won the belt. What's his best win? RDA? Okay. Beat Tyron Woodley, old man Woodley. Old man Robbie Lawler, old man Masvidal. I'm tired of acting as if this wouldn't be a good fight for Volkanovski. Stylistically, it's very similar to the Islam fight, except for the striking yet again. I think Khabib is a more dangerous striker than Colby Covington because of his speed, because of his explosiveness, and his chin. Colby Covington doesn't have the best chin. I don't think Volkanovski could beat Usman, Shavkat, Leon, most of these guys like Jeff Neal that aren't even in the top 5. I don't think Volk could beat. But I think he could beat Colby. It's just a stylistic matchup. You guys aren't going to like that. Next take, Conor McGregor is completely washed. I am tired of acting like Conor McGregor's the same guy. All right? You're living in the past. And people, their number one argument is that he only lost to the best. Okay, who's he beat? If he's only lost to the best, name the guys that he's beat. Chad Mendes, Eddie Alvarez, Nate Diaz. When? 2016 and before. I'm tired of the bullshit, man. Conor McGregor is completely a shell of his former self. Look at this man in any interview and compare that with an interview from him from 2 years ago. 2 years ago, he was washed. And look at his interviews these days. Conor McGregor is off of his gourd. I don't think that Conor McGregor is trying his best to act like an addict, a party drug addict. I don't think that's what he's doing, because that's what it looks like to me. Every single Conor McGregor interview I see, he looks like he's on everything. And I'm not talking about the sauce. He's twitching around. He's paranoid. He's mumbling his words. Conor McGregor, the most well-spoken star in the UFC at one time, cannot, for the life of him, speak without slurring his words. Look at this picture of him. This is from a few years ago in 2021 where his leg snapped. Yeah, go figure. He hasn't fought in 2 years. He needs more time off, right? He looked old in that picture too. This is Dustin Poirier's easiest fight ever since Bobby Green. Dustin Poirier had his way with Conor. Didn't have his way with Gaethje. Even though he won, Dustin has won a lot of hard fights, but they've been tough fights. Conor McGregor was a complete easy matchup for him. Beat Conor's ass on the ground like he was Khabib in the second fight. I mean, in their trilogy, but you know what I'm trying to say. The easiest fight of Dustin Poirier's whole career. Dustin didn't have an easy fight with Dan Hooker, but Conor McGregor, he could just knock him out in the second round like that. Halfway through the second round, fucks Conor up completely. Conor's broken. As soon as he's the nail, he's out. He wilts, gets KO'd. Can't even make it out of the first round because his body is given out. Can't take low kicks. And again, he's only lost to Khabib. He's only lost to Dustin Poirier. He's only lost to Nate Diaz. All right, great. Who's he beat? Again, you cannot name me a single guy that he's beat within the past, 7 years other than Cowboy Cerrone? He's declined and you know it, all right? All this guy does is hang out in his Black Forge Inn. He goes on vacations. He hangs out on his yacht. This is not a lifestyle that is conducive to being a ranked UFC fighter. It just isn't. I don't care if he has a good left hand. That doesn't mean shit. If you're not training hard and you're not dedicating your life to it, you aren't going to be able to beat ranked fighters. Simple as. Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, they've made millions of dollars. They're still hungry dogs compared to Conor in regards to how much they want to win, in regards to how much another million would mean to them. I mean, dude, he looks like Joe Barbaro. I don't know if you guys know who that is. That's that guy from Mafia 2. Conor McGregor has changed so much. He's gotten so bloated off of the water retention from taking sauce that he doesn't even look like the same man. And you cannot look at an interview of Conor McGregor these days and tell me that this is a guy that is going to be a contender in 2023. If you don't understand that Conor McGregor isn't a complete shell of his former self, you're not socially aware. I'm tired of people acting like he still has it, like that left hand means jack shit. Congrats, you had an amazing skill set. You were so dedicated. When I see videos of Conor McGregor talking back in 2014, it's almost tragic. He was obsessed with MMA, obsessed to the T. And he's just not anymore, man. He's been on the party train. And I'm not talking about alcohol. I'm not talking about sauce. I'm talking about some other stuff too. This is a train wreck in the making. The guy was washed a few years ago, and compared to now, he was prime McGregor in 2020. That's how bad he's fallen off. Hasn't won a real fight since 2016. Donald Cerrone was an absolute walk in the park coming off of 2 KO losses. Again, he's only lost to the best. Well, who's he beat? You're going to have to go back to the 90s. He was a completely different guy back then. I don't care if he's just 34 years old. He's done. He's completely done. He cannot compete with guys that are actually dedicated these days. I don't care how good your left hand is. It cannot make up for living a dedicated lifestyle that's conducive to being the best fighter that you could possibly be. And Conor isn't doing that. And just because he's still training doesn't mean he's still at the level that he was before. The game has gotten a lot better, and Conor hasn't. He's only gotten worse. Adesanya is not a top 5 striker. He's just not. Most people, if they're going to give their list for the best strikers in MMA, Adesanya is one of the first guys that would leave their mouth. Pause. But you kind of understand what I'm saying. Like, most of you guys are going to sit here and tell me that Adesanya, he's without a doubt a top 5 guy. And this is what I'm going to say. He has the fortune of fighting in one of the worst divisions in MMA, the middleweight division. Marvin Vettori and Jared Cannonier are fighters that wouldn't even be ranked if they were fighting in any weight class below 170 pounds. They wouldn't even touch the rankings, all right? And you look at the strikers that he's faced. Robert Whittaker, phenomenal striker. He completely whooped Robert Whittaker in 2019. Beautiful performance from Adesanya. One of his best fights ever, right? Amazing. This is why he is one of the best strikers. Well, what about all of his fights with guys like that? Well, he's fought Whittaker twice. What about his fight with Jan? What about his fight with Alex Pereira? Well, how does he do against these strikers? Well, he has lost 3 out of 5 times to those guys. And I don't care if you're going to sit here and call me delusional by saying that Robert Whittaker got robbed in the rematch. Watch the fight back. 2, 4, and 5. Those rounds go to Robert Whittaker. That's that. Adesanya lost that fight and got outstruck, got out-jabbed, got out-damaged in that fight. And as far as I'm concerned, he lost one fight to Alex Pereira in the UFC, great, and he got completely shut down and outstruck by Jan Blachowicz. So out of the 5 times he's fought strikers, he's lost the majority of those matchups. That is not a top 5 guy. I don't care how many title defenses he has. This is why people automatically assume that Adesanya is the best striker, because he's a striker and he's a champion, but he's in an awful division and he's fighting guys that aren't very good. Just because he's not a top 5 guy does not mean he's not amazing. Isreal Adesanya is an amazing striker. I just don't like when people say he's without a doubt the best striker in the UFC. I'll name more strikers right now that I think are better than him. Volkanovski is without a doubt a better striker than Isreal Adesanya. Jan Blachowicz proved that he was a better striker than Isreal Adesanya. He shut him down. Yair Rodriguez shits all over anything that Adesanya can do in the cage. The truth is, guys, in divisions like 155, 145, 135, they're just better at the end of the day. That's how it always has been. Lighter weight class guys are better. It's not that big of a surprise that you can have 3 or 4 guys in each of those divisions that are better than Adesanya, who's a champion at 185. Again, just because he's a champion, he's rated as the best. He's the best 185-pound striker right now. Great. It doesn't mean he's better than a guy like Yair Rodriguez just because Rodriguez isn't a champ. Wonderboy's a better striker. Alex Pereira, I am going to say it again. He's a better striker than Adesanya. He's outstruck him every single time they fought. What do I mean by that? He's outpointed Adesanya in both fights. Yes, he got KO'd. Yes, Adesanya proved that he belongs in there with Alex Pereira. But you look at their first fight, he got outstruck. You look at their second fight, he was losing that fight up until the KO. And I'm not sitting here and saying that Adesanya is that much worse than Pereira. I just think Pereira overall is a better striker. Corey Sandhagen, I think, is a better striker than Adesanya. As I had just mentioned, I think there are about 5 or 6 guys that are better than him. That's it. I still think he's amazing. He's without a doubt a top 10 striker. I'd probably have him at number 7 or 8. It doesn't mean he's not amazing, but people don't like to hear that. Like, he's barely squeaked by guys that Robert Whittaker has dominated, man. That's just how it is. And he's lost most of his fights with good strikers. 3 out of 5, in my opinion. The Robert Whittaker 2 fight, there's a real argument that that was a robbery. That's how it is, man. I don't know if you guys agree with this, if you guys disagree, but again, like, how has Adesanya created that much of a gap between himself and the rest of the pack? We've seen this guy losing striking battles. There are people like Volkanovski that has never lost a striking battle against another striker. For sure, you can bring up Islam Makhachev, who Volkanovski had a tough fight with. The threat of the takedown exists in that fight. If that's a pure stand-up battle, it looks differently. Look at any Volkanovski fight against top strikers. 30-27 to Jose Aldo. Completely washed out Max Holloway 3 fucking times. Look at Wonderboy's stand-up battles. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Until next time. Everyone thinks it's hard to get lean. Oh, it's too difficult. I'm too lazy to eat well. In reality, that's just a big fat excuse. You just don't know how to cook. And if you know how to make healthy food taste good, it's 100 times easier to stick to your diet. Today, I'm gonna show you guys how to make a classic comfort food with whole and unprocessed ingredients. Let's make some chocolate ice cream. We're gonna get it cracking with some whole milk and some full fat yogurt. I'm using the rawest form of chocolate today, so I'm adding cacao powder, and to sweeten it up, a half a cup of raw honey. Now that's 4 ingredients. I'm gonna blend that up. Now I'm gonna pour it into my ice cream machine. We're gonna leave this on for 25 minutes. Super easy. I'm adding a little bit of frozen chopped cherries to add some fruit. And look at that refreshing, healthy ice cream. Only 5 goddamn ingredients. For more recipes like this, comfort foods made with whole and unprocessed ingredients, check out my real food cookbook. The link is in my description. Use code MMA for 30% off.